This is our main studio space. It's called the Founders Theater in honor of Katie Niehoff and Michelle Miller, who are the co-founders of Velocity in 1996. And we feel it's really important to honor them as we move forward into this new era and not leave dance history behind as often is done. So this space is really exciting to us. We had a lot of great things to work with in here, but we also did a lot of work on it. So the floor is the original floor. We refinished and stained it. It's beautiful blonde wood floor, similar to the one that we had in the Oddfellows Hall. And then we ended up punching out skylights in the ceiling and installing a brand new HVAC system. So there'll be heating and air conditioning in this theater. Also, that's a big difference for us, as we had no thermostat control in the Oddfellows Hall. This theater has 3 looks to it, and what you see right now is kind of a mix of everything, but you can have everything exposed, so it would be just the brick wall and then our white walls going around, or you can have, we have this white curtain that folds all the way around. That can then turn the space into more of a gallery type setting, which is something that we find dancers are wanting more and more, to work out of spaces that are not simply black box theaters. And then we have these blacks that we can fold and do more of your standard black box theater. This wing isn't here yet.
Oh, I see. So those are the wings.
What's that?
Those are the wings.
These are the wings.
I didn't catch that before. Okay.
Oh, okay. And you can pull out these blacks and do more of a black box theater. And there is a black curtain that, oh yes, here, that we can pull all the way around to see more what that will look like. Oh, this is this way. See, I'm clearly still getting used to the whole thing. So that gives you kind of a feel of what it will be like on one side at least when it's set up for the blacks. This is the Steward Studio. It's our dedicated rehearsal studio, which just means that we're not going to have classes in here at all. We're going to leave it open around the clock for artists to rent out and rehearse here. It'll also be the main studio that our choreographer in residence works out of. Amelia Reber is our choreographer in residence this year. I think it's the most inspiring studio, just with the light and the brick, and the size of the space feels small enough to be able to work sort of intimately with yourself or your company, but not so small that you can't move around too much. And the wood floor is not going to be exactly this. This is actually a brand new sprung floor that we need to lay Marley down on top of still. So we're going to do that next week before the grand opening.
And what was this room before?
This room was actually part of the main room that we just walked through. We had to build this wall in order to section off a part of the room that we could use in order to have a backstage space for shows, and then also to have another studio that we could rent out for rehearsals. We've always had at least 3 studios. Well, in this last stretch of history, we've always had 3 studios, and so it was important to reestablish that, and it does leave enough space in both spaces.
Mm-hmm. Are your rental rates changing?
The rental rates will be going up a little bit for the big space, and then our rehearsal rental rate is still in flux. We've been doing a pretty subsidized rate of $10 an hour that we would really like to carry over. So we're going to do the best we can. Really depends on how much contributed income we can get to support that. So this is our third and final studio. This is the other classroom studio. And again, it has the beautiful view and windows that look out on the park. And we can also see the Oddfellows Hall out the window. Have our bittersweet memories about that. So the Oddfellows building sold in 2007 to a commercial developer. And the building up until that point had been owned by this couple that just had an interest in supporting nonprofit and arts organizations, and so had affordable rent. It wasn't on the market, and then this developer, Ted Schroff, offered the owners then an offer they couldn't refuse. I think it was for 8 times what they had bought the building for. So they took it, and that meant that everybody who was in the building, who had always had a sale and demolition clause in their leases, were all of a sudden subject to that sale and demolition clause, and didn't have it on their radar at all. So it was a surprise. It's not the smartest thing to sign that kind of lease. It's oftentimes not an option to sign a different kind of lease, though. So Velocity, along with a lot of other nonprofits and arts organizations, including Freehold, were priced out of the building. The rent went up 300%. So we had been paying about $8,000 for 4 different spaces, and the offer from Ted originally was to pay about $32 for a month for an organization that has an operating budget of a little more than $300,000 a year. It's just not financially responsible to even try to justify that. There's no way we could have lasted. So we negotiated a short-term lease to keep one of the studios, and then we subleased some space in our main space theater from Hallie, who's the owner of the Century Ballroom and has been super supportive to Velocity during the transition. Kara O'Toole, the executive director, was hired in 2006, and she had almost a year of programmatic bliss before she was hit with this organizational challenge. And I was living in San Francisco and heard about the sale of the Oddfellows Hall, and my heart just broke. And we got in touch, and they ended up coming up here to work on the capital campaign to move Velocity into what we're standing into now, which is, after all this time and the money raised and the work that we've put into it, feels like a victory for the organization. It didn't seem possible to replace the Oddfellows Hall because, and it's not, it's a special place that has the history of so many artists and performers inside of it that we can't take with us. But we're really happy to have landed close by in a beautiful space that's new and built just for dancers, and to have everything cohesively linked together and to be more visible to the community. Yeah, there was definitely a bleak moment with this building closing, or this organization gone, and then the Oddfellows Hall being sold, where we lost about 5 small theaters, or 6 actually if you count the little theater here, and 7 if you count the cabaret space below us, in 1 year, in one neighborhood in Capitol Hill. And so it just meant that lots of people who depend on artistic space, not just to make work, but then to present it, were out of luck and have been moving to other neighborhoods and utilizing other spaces. And there's now this dance company that performs just in people's homes. So there's been a lot of innovation around how can you perform and stay active as an artist if there's no space for you.
What company is that?
Stimulate Dance, actually. Yeah. So, but ultimately that's not good enough. At least in my eyes, it's not good enough to say that we'll just keep artists practicing in their living rooms and on the fringes of our cities. They're generally what help develop a neighborhood to be attractive to developers in the first place. And a lot of developers in this neighborhood have benefited on how many arts organizations and artists have worked to create a unique community here.